last season, the race we tried to do in Singapore was canceled. But now we're here this season for Singapore in season 20 of RPL Formula 2 to try once more without having the race not go forward. Last week in China, we had Leo Lund take career win number 1, career pole number 1 in Formula 2. We also had Skither take RPL win overall, win 66. Now, although he's not here so far, or probably tonight, we'll see who can tackle the streets of Singapore. The Marina Bay Circuit hosts round number 7 of the RPL F2 season. Welcome along, folks. I'm your commentator for tonight, Ryan Searles, and it's good to have you all here once again for more RPL action. I cannot wait to get this going, that's for sure. And I hope you guys are ready for the event as well. With that being said, this always seems to be a fun one in Singapore. It's our first time with these cars at this circuit. I think these cars definitely are a bit smaller than the previous F2 cars, and definitely the F1 cars as well. Meaning, when racing wheel to wheel, we should be seeing drivers be able to pull it off in places we did not see last night with the Tier 2 cars. And speaking of last night, I want to give a big congrats to race winner George, potentially Goatley after the stewards report. We'll find out if that does change. And Tier 3 ERT Arai took the victory, but that may be going to Turbo after the stewards report as well. So I want to give a congrats to those guys for winning the Tier 2 and Tier 3 races. But with that being said, the championship standings, we spoke about Skither. You know, he's not in the lobby. He's the man second in the championship, 26 points behind Jack Miles. Third in the championship is Night Owl. He finished runner-up, third place last week. He's 56 points back. Minako is 66 points back. They're the ones really in contention for the championship, if anybody is at this stage of the season, behind the main rivals of Jack and Skither. Jack and Skither both trying to go for 3 times a title. Jack's had 2 in F2. Skither has had 2. Skither's had other titles as well, but not like Jack, to where, you know, you only have just the F2 titles. So nonetheless, it shall be interesting. We also have Invicta, who lead the constructors over Dams. 67 points the gap. ART sit 3rd. Prema sit 4th. Prema have been doing a great job, to say the least. So that should be lots of fun. Minako actually gave me a little bit of insight. These cars are actually larger than the older previous gen of F2 cars, which it doesn't seem like they are. It feels like they're shorter, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And Skither mentioning that if they hold the lobby for a few minutes, he will be able to join in. But yeah, we have lots of things going on here in RPL. Not as much on the F2 side. We have SV, who has a race ban. Wavy Knife, if he shows up to the event tonight, he'll have to serve a qualifying ban. And speaking of SV, he's no longer the F2 TP. It was F4 who took over. As we mentioned the previous week, he was going to take over after last week. But with that being said, he actually just left the server a few minutes ago. So I believe we'll be getting a new TP over there on that aspect of things. He owns the AIX and VAR cars. But yeah, we shall see what ends up happening tonight in Singapore. Like we said, this event was canceled last season due to the lack of numbers. Right now we have 11 in here, which I don't really understand why the interest has dipped the way it has in RPL F2, because this used to be a while ago a tier where you would work your way up and you would end up going from F2 to maybe Tier 2 or Tier 1. And that's where a lot of our guys ended up winning out big time on. And in fact, it was actually this race back in season 18. We had quite a smaller grid as well. It was that race, I think it was 14 or 15 drivers. That's where attendance really started dipping in season 18 before F2 shut down for a little while. Super Liam returned to the podium that race. That was after Annex got disqualified, meaning Reese Dainty got another F2 win to his name. Got quite the field in here tonight. We have some familiar faces returning to RPL F2. Cryptic is one of them. RPL Titan Iron is one of them. Titan usually does not race RPL F2 anymore after the way last season's cars and everything went. He stepped down from full time, so it's good to see him back. With that being said, another driver who returned last week, who I thought he was on debut, but I look back at a lot of results back then, and he did race a few years ago in RPL, and he is back. Midfield Maestro is one of the drivers who have not raced in quite a bit in RPL in recent times up until now. But speaking of those previous Singapore races, it seems like whenever we race in Singapore in RPL, we always have a limited amount of finishers. Right now we have a limited amount of drivers on our grid for tonight's event. We're going to see how that affects things. But we had some surprise podium sitters back in the last time we were here. Reese Dainty was not so fast with those cars, and he got on the podium and won the race. And Liam also got back onto the RPL F2 podium. Titan says it's a wet feature start. That will be interesting for our drivers. Cryptic is a previous title contender in RPL F2, and he is our driver we're riding on board with as we start the qualifying laps here in Singapore. It's one of the longest of the season, to say the least. And look at this, a mistake already from Cryptic. We go down to turn one. This is, in fact, I believe, if I'm correct, the third race, either the second or third race with the brand new F2 cars. So that will be crucial to look out for. Meanwhile, at the back of our field, you could already see RPL Titan Iron is currently the slowest as we're coming through Sector 1. 30.0 is the time that Minico sets being fastest in Sector 1. Remember, Invicta, they lead the Constructors' title currently as things stand. But Minico, Jack, Blue Goggy, JTK, Night Owl, that's our top 5 drivers right now as things stand. And it looks like those guys are the ones trading spots at the front of the field for pole position. In RPL F2, we've had a total of 58 drivers get onto pole position. And there are 2 drivers currently contending for pole that have never been on pole in RPL F2. That's the top 2 right now as we get to the sector split. JTK and Blue Goggy. JTK, a previous F2 podium sitter and a Tier 2 champion. Goggy won the sprint race last night in Tier 2 at this circuit and is an F2 winner once to his name, in fact. But can he hold it? Can he hold the top spot right now over Jack Miles, who leads the championship? It looks like he slipped up there in the chicane and gave it away to Jack Miles. Across the line will go, and it is very close to the top of our board. Look at that. Jack Miles is back on pole in RPL F2. That is pole number 10 for Jack Miles. He's now 3rd on the all-time list. Blue Goggy slipped up and just missed out on a chance for a first RPL F2 pole. Look at that, right behind our championship leader. And just like last night, it was a close gap at the front of our field for pole position. In fact, it was also just like last night where the top 3 are separated by, well, less than a tenth. Look at that. JTK is 3rd, Minico 4th, Eric 5th. Our top 3 spots for the sprint race event will be followed by Cryptic on pole, Titan 2nd, and Midfield Maestro will start 3rd. Championship leader Jack extends the gap by going on to pole position. What a lap that was from the Welshman. He is now tied with BRT Griffiths for the all-time amount of poles by a Welsh driver. So there is talk about rain in the feature, but that was crazy how it was close at the front of the field. Jack Miles on pole position for the sprint race. Give us your prediction in the Twitch chat for what you think will happen, whether it be the start or the results. We have 5 seconds until lights out here. And here we go. The 5 red lights are kicking on for the sprint race in RPL F2 Singapore. The 5 lights come on. The 5 lights go out. We are away. Cryptic leads the thing into turn 1. Midfield Maestro and Night Owl have already jumped Titan Iron Wolf, and there's a collision. Look at that. Titan had made contact with the Prem at turn 1. He has spun around, and now he's at the back of the field. Luckily, he's still within striking distance of Skither, so that didn't affect him too badly, but Midfield Maestro is coming down on Cryptic's lead here at the front of our field. Night Owl is a second back, but you know, with the limited drivers in this field, that's going to mean that we have more attention on some of these battles right now. Look at this. Minako and JTK are racing it out wheel to wheel for 6th place. JTK kind of got put off the road right there, but no harm, no foul, and Cryptic has spun from the lead. Look at that. George Up Williams makes a dive bomb. 3 wide. Blue Goggy sticks his nose in there where it didn't belong. And he got in the middle of a 3-car accident. JTK's involved. Jack's involved. That's the championship leader down the order. Man, that's going to make this door wide open for the sprint event. You have guys like Skither and Minako who have won races before, and George as well, who will take advantage of Jack, Miles, Goggy, and JTK's misfortune there. Here are your positions gained. Skither has gained the most, and George with the second most, but our biggest loser, of course, comes from the man who spawned from the race lead, TSR Cryptic. I don't know what happened there from Cryptic, but that was appalling. Meanwhile, Minako follows right behind Eric, who got his first podium in Canada a few weeks ago. This is for 4th place right now. Midfield Maestro takes control of the race, leading lap 1 after that spin from Cryptic. And remember, everybody is on the soft compound tires here for the sprint race. JTK and Goggy got involved in that incident. Let's see if there's any damage on either one of their cars. I think Goggy got away with it. I don't really know who to put blame at for that incident, but when that happened, Goggy stuck his nose in there, heading into the left-hander, and it looked like when they tried to turn for the corner, Goggy was the one who should have not been in there. He should have backed out. I'm not sure, though, if they could have made this corner right here 3 wide if anybody turned in too early, or whoever the car was on the outside turned in too much. Right now, we're turning on the straight here to provide Minako from not overtaking. Look at this. Minako and Skither sitting behind Eric right now. And Eric makes a little mishap of the corner. It backs up Minako. It backs up Skither. We go to the hairpin. Heavy braking from the drivers. This is going to be so tricky. Look at that from Minako. A little wiggle wobble. And it allows Eric to continue in 4th place. Further behind, we have got Blue Goggy getting ahead of Cryptic. Cryptic made a mistake there, and Blue Goggy goes through for 8th place in this race. JTK is also in that battle as well, trying to get through. He was part of the car, part of the trouble that was on lap 1, and I think the only one who got damaged from that whole kerfuffle was Jack Miles. Lap 3 underway, DRS will get activated. Midfield Maestro leads this race, and similar to what we saw in Tier 2, George Alf Williams is in the catbird seat, and Cryptic just got a track limit penalty there out of the final corner. JTK now picks up the fastest lap of this race. JTK and Goggy are talking over their incident. They're in the same voice chat right now as things stand, and Goggy doesn't really know who to put blame on. Neither does JTK. Meanwhile, we're going to see George Up Williams take the lead of this race, and George does not clear Midfield Maestro. Midfield Maestro now battling in the midfield, battling to hang on for the race lead, and now trying to make a switcheroo around the outside. George Up Williams has been put vulnerable. They're side by side. Look at this racing between the two for the race lead. It is close. It's pinching. It's George Up Williams with the race lead. Minako further behind. Had got overtaken by Skither a little bit ago. That is for 5th place. Skither is trying to capitalize on Jack Miles' misfortune. Look at that dive bomb from Skither. Skither now is put 3 wide as he goes. Minako will go through the pair of them. He's up to 4th. And look at this further behind. Eric has to yield behind Skither. JTK and Cryptic are racing it out for a position here. JTK has got the better end of Cryptic. Remember, Jack Miles is not far behind as well. He has damage to his car, but the last point spot is up in 8th for the sprint. That's Blue Goggy right behind Titan. And Eric made a little lunge there down at the chicane, the reprofiled section, back on F123, and got the move done. Our top 4 now are in a DRS train rather than it being the top 6. Faded says in the Twitch chat, Goggy needs to be banned from the league. I think that's a bit harsh. I think you're thinking of a different driver who has a race ban this weekend, who some people argue need to be, but nonetheless, George Williams is under pressure at the front of the field, but there's not a move looking to be made there, I think, at the front. It's Skither who does pick off Eric for 5th place, and Blue Goggy has got an RPL Titan Iron. And is that damage I saw picked up from either the Prema or the Invicta? I know Minako and Night Owl were very tight against one another, and that's not the first time that's happened between these two. These two collided in China down at the hairpin, and right now they're racing out for 3rd place. It was a bit aggressive between the pair of them last week, but right now there's no harm, no foul between them, but they're just trying to get through and, you know, find their places here in the field. Do they want to be on the podium right now? Do they want to wait it out? Do they want to go for the lead here? What's going to be the case? Car on the wall. That's Eric. And he's facing the wrong way. That's a free position for Goggy, Titan, JTK, Cryptic, and now Jack. Jack is 1 spot closer to the points position, which he needs desperately. RPL Titan Iron is fighting for his life to hang on for 7th place, which soon will become the final point spot. And here we go. A move maybe being made. No, that's not the case anymore. Night Owl does hang on for 3rd place. And what has happened here? Front wing missing from RPL Titan Iron. JTK, does he have damage? He does. RPL Titan Iron and JTK have come to blows, and I'm not sure what's happened there, but that affects things for the sake of the championship gap, because look at this. Jack Miles is up to the final point spot, and off goes JTK. Cryptic has got yet another penalty on our board. Jack Miles is going to be awarded 2 points here from the sprint, which may help his championship deficit with Skither if he loses out in this race. And George Williams had a big moment there from our race lead. Look at what it's allowed. It's allowed Skither to catch back up, who was previously out of the DRS train. And look at this. Some 2X teammates racing it out. Jack Miles and Cryptic. Some 2 Tier 2 champions racing it out. Jack Miles gets ahead of Cryptic. Remember, Jack Miles has damage. Cryptic spun from the lead in lap 1. And looks like he's not up to speed too much with these F2 cars, to say the least. Oh, get the braking right into the hairpin, guys. This got really close. Minako, you saw him hit the back of Night Owl, or at least get hit from the back with Skither. I think everyone had a little stack up happen there. So SV is wondering what happened there down at, I believe that's turn 9. I'm just going to check the corner just to be 100%. That is turn 9 with Goggy, JTK, and Jack. Well, they were 3 wide into the corner, and as you say, sometimes 3 into 1 does not work. Well, it definitely does not work at turn 9 in Singapore, as we've seen, and no surprise there that they collided from it. Meanwhile, Titan and JTK, both with missing front wings, are back at it. We're going to see if any of them come to the pits. JTK comes to the pits, but he's not going to have a fresh set for the sprint, or the feature race, excuse me. However, it is supposed to rain in the feature race as well. So that'll be interesting to see if they need a fresh set or not. JTK is out of the event. He is retired in the pit lane. Meanwhile, Minako trails Night Owl by just about a tenth. You saw midfield Maestro make a slip up there. I want to see if I can get a word in with JTK with what happened to him. JTK, I see you're quite unhappy with Titan. What happened between you two right there?
Well, I was going for a switchback. I was on the right side, so I had the inside for the next corner, and I don't know. I think Titan didn't quite like the fact that I was there, because he just turned right on a straight and put me in the wall. It broke off my entire front wing, and that's basically race over when there's no pit stops. So, yeah, decided to retire. No point in continuing.
All right, thank you. Well, meanwhile, we just had 3 wide down the little back straight right there, and look at this. Midfield Maestro, second place driver, has a penalty to his name. Miniko is now in third, Night Owl fourth, and Skither still remains in the P5 spot. We're past halfway, and George Alp Williams is leading the race. George, I believe throughout all tiers, is looking for win 19. Oh, look at this. Skither saw a slip up from Night Owl. It's allowing him to go to the inside line here. And they're going to be side by side, but Night Owl gets ahead. And Blue Goggy runs 6th, but now has a penalty next to his name. George Up Williams, if he wins tonight, he will break a long drought in F2. It'll be his first win since season 11. RPL Titan Iron, who has damage, has now lost a place to his teammate, and Miniko now will go chase after our race leader. He is up to 2nd place on our boards. Miniko is trying to win his 2nd RPL F2 race. We said this last week, but he had the battle with Night Owl hinder him in trying to do that. Now he's got George Alp Williams to chase down and try and do that now from... So, obviously JTK retired in the pits, you know, thinking it was useless to continue on. We're going to see if that does get submitted to the stewards. Remember, you're not allowed to retire in the pit lane unless you have an emergency, rear wing damage, or really whatever it may be. So we're going to try to remain consistent on that with seeing what incidents do get reported and whatnot. But Midfield Maestro currently will not hold on to this podium on track as things stand due to the track limit penalty. Now, here's the thing. He can try and pull a gap over some of the drivers behind that are closing in. Jack Miles is in 7th right now behind Blue Goggy, and that's crucial because Jack Miles needs to get this gap down if he wants another place, because, for all you know, Skither is trying to get the place of Night Owl, and remember, that's a championship gap that's coming down. Look at this. Move made at turn 1. Side by side. Night Owl almost has to go off there and gets squeezed right onto the curb, but Skither completes the overtake for 4th place. That's another place gained and more points gained for Skither in this championship hunt with Jack Miles in the road to win 3 RPL F2 titles. Good to see you in chat, JTKF1 fan. But it's unfortunate that your driver retired from the race. Titan said, not what happened. Wheel straight planted on the middle of the track and JTK turned into me. So we at least, unlike the Goggy, JTK, and Jack incident that happened earlier on, we have both sides of the incident with Titan and JTK's side here at least. So that is good to know at least what happened on both ends rather than just one end of the spectrum. Meanwhile, there's still a DRS train here for 2nd place, but it's all behind Miniko, who has gained 2/10 on our race leader, George. And let's give you the gap to the leader. Let's see how far back some of these guys have fallen in the 8 laps complete so far in the event. Remember, Titan has no front wing. He's just trailing around, not wanting to pit onto new tires. This is probably painful for the American driver. It's also probably painful for Eric, who spun around right in front of our leaders. And look at this. Skither and Midfield Maestro trade spots on track this time, and not just through the penalty format. Skither is onto the podium and trying to go fight with Miniko and George. Skither pulling out, trying to make sure there's no slipstream picked up from the car behind. Midfield Maestro and Night Owl are still close, on track for 4th. Miniko has reeled in our race leader, George. It's either Miniko who picks up a 2nd win tonight in RPL F2 and no longer is a 1-win wonder, or it's George Alp Williams breaking a 9-season drought. This is how long... Hold on. Night Owl trying to make the move here for 4th place. He is alongside and now ahead of Midfield Maestro. I was just going to say, this is how long it's been since George's last F2 victory in Season 11. It was that season when he won. It was the last season without, excuse me, yeah, without the RPL F1 champion, without the RPL F1 or F2 champions competing in the series. And it also was only 2 seasons since the last Monaco race in RPL F2. Well, now it's been 11 seasons since the last RPL F2 Monaco race. And, well, we've had champions back. And, yeah, well, that's safe to say. Monaco is hunting down our leader, George, and you can see how much more pace the Canadian has than the Welshman does. Monaco wait for it, or does he go for the move? Right now, George locks the rears. Little mistake from George might allow Monaco to go through, but Monaco has a slip up on the curb himself, and look at who that allows to close in. Championship contender Skither has gained the gap down by 4/10 now. RPL Titan Iron got a penalty there in 10th place for track limits, but George Alp Williams has hung on to the lead and currently may win this race if he does put Monaco back in a DRS with Skither. How effective is that DRS? That's going to be the thing we watch out for down this DRS straight, because in China, that DRS was extremely powerful. Now, it looks like George F. Williams is a sitting duck here for our lead. How does he defend it? He's pinching Monaco. There's a bit of trading between the paint. These two have history over in RPL F1. They collided in Zandvoort. Right now, they're keeping it very clean for our race lead, and Monaco is through just on George, but George clipped the barrier. Now, Skither looks to go to the inside. And now Skither goes for a dive bomb. George and Skither are both round. Skither went for a move from a little bit of a ways back, but it looked like it was going to work out, and it just didn't. And the two have come together. George has now hung on to the place for now, but Night Owl runs P2, and I'm not sure if anyone of these two will remain on the podium when it comes to the steward's room, because that podium could go to either Midfield Maestro or maybe even Gagi. Who knows? Depends on if Skither or George, you could say, get penalized for that. I think Skither has damage, because he did not have a fun time coming through that final corner. George right now is on the net podium when the penalties do get applied. But Monaco, I want to know, after this race is over, what is it about the street tracks? It was podium here momentarily, I believe. Or at least podium contention for you back in the RPL F1 race last season. Blue Gagi has picked off some cars. So has George. Midfield Maestro has just gone from 3rd to 6th on one straight, so he's losing time. And he's losing touch with the front of the field as well. Blue Gagi runs on the podium, but, you know, you got to wonder if it weren't for that penalty that he has. He definitely has the feature race to go to prove himself that he can get back on the F2 podium once again. Maybe get back on the top step as well, with that being said. And it was Vegas as well that Monaco also had a podium, too, that I can recall. So, yeah, Monaco, I know you're watching for sure. What is it about the streets? I've got to ask. Well, the guy who wanted me to say, for Lights Out, Ohio Skibbity Riz Giat Toilet whatever garbage, currently runs in P3 and is holding on over George for the place. And we start now the final lap of this race. Monaco is trying to win for the second time in RPL F2. He won once last season, but this would be a big statement here, the second driver for Invicta to claim victory tonight in Singapore under the lights. Does that car say BRB? That's hilarious. Which one is it? Which one is... Oh, yeah, yes, it does. You're right. Yeah, it does. I wonder if Jack says that too. Nope, it doesn't. But fun thing you found out there, Goatley. Meanwhile, Blue Gagi has 3rd on track. He'll lose it on the penalties. And George will get the place on track and cuts right in front of the Trident. And the Trident goes into the barrier with his front wing missing. Blue Gagi has had contact once again in Sector 2. And it's cost him of a podium on track. Skither is behind George here for the place and trying to get another one here. I mean, it'll be the second time he maybe goes for a move at the hairpin. We'll find out if he does go for it or not. Skither is trailing the high tech and does not go for it this time. I think he'll wait. Oh, he punts him. George kind of played the game of park the bus there with Skither, and it worked out. Here's the DRS for Skither. Is he going to get impatient? We're going to find out. George hangs on. He picked up a win for the first time last season in RPL F2 on 3 wheels in Imola. And right now, he's going to claim a second victory. And it comes under the lights in Singapore. Minico wins once again in RPL. It comes in the sprint race for the second time, and a fight to the line. George hangs on for a third over Skither. Night Owl, who battled Minico very fiercely, hangs on for second place. It's another battle between them two. Then this week, Minico gets the better end of him for the top step this time rather than the second step. Cryptic is hanging on for 8th right now, the last point spot, but Eric wants it on track. These two are rubbing wheels right now. Cryptic gets shoved back on there. Did Eric overtake off track will now become the question, but he does get 8th place as Cryptic slips up and goes off. Midfield Maestro finished 5th. Skither, championship contender, finished 4th. Jack Miles was 6th. Blue Goggy, who crashed twice in this race, finished 7th. And RPL Titan Iron will cross in 10th. Minico, those fireworks, yeah, they're for you. Win number 2 in RPL F2. And you gotta ask for this guy, you know, after how much bad luck he has. Not, is it over? But is it safe to say, you know, these wins are not flukes anymore for Minico. He's the 52nd different driver in RPL F2 to win multiple races. And in fact, I can safely say, in RPL F2, this is the guy with the most wins from his nation. We keep talking about the diversity in RPL quite a bit recently, but, you know, there are not a lot of drivers from Canada in RPL. You got Minico, Zora, Wrecked by Storm, Ardell. We have more Canadians now than we did before, but with that being said, Canada on top. With his fist in the air. Invicta win the race, but it's not with Jack Miles this time. It's with Minico. And, you know, I've joked about this with Minico before, but it's no joke this time. The number 1 in his name does replicate what he did today. In the sprint race, it's a victory for Minico. He's won a sprint race and he's won a feature race in RPL F2. You know who couldn't say that for a long time? Tadpole. It felt like forever where he was just only winning sprint races in RPL F2. Here are your results from our field in the sprint event. Minico wins. Night Owl 2nd. He got a win earlier this season. George is 3rd. Pending maybe penalties. I don't know who will be blamed at that, if George turned in or Skither just made a reckless dive bomb. Midfield Maestro, Jack, Goggy, and Eric round out our point spots. Cryptic, Titan, and JTK were all outside of the points, but JTK was our only DNF from that event.
My stream doesn't want to work.
I'm going to ask Goggy what happened there on lap 1 and who he thinks the blame will go for. Goggy, we're going to try another day in a row. Do you have a copy?
Oh my god, it is absolutely...
You're right, it is a monsoon. Hello? Yes, hello, I can hear you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask quickly before we get going for the start, what do you think on your end happened on lap 1 with JTK and Jack Miles?
I mean, to be honest, it was... I mean, 3 wide in any corner around Singapore is never going to end well. I just got sandwiched in the middle, I couldn't go anywhere. And yeah, we tried as simple as that.
All right, well, good luck in the feature race. I see it's going to start. It is pissing it down. I hope you and JTK can have a good race, since we'll check back in with them later on. The 5 red lights are coming on. It is coming down the rain. It's going out the lights. Jack Miles leads us into turn 1. Look at this. Everybody just trundling off the grid, trying to find grip. Goggy keeps second. Minico and GTK keep third places, while behind them, it's wheel to wheel. George slides into the corner and almost goes into the side of the Prema. Everyone looks to keep it clean. There's a bit of contact back here with Cryptic and Eric, but what a crazy, crazy start here. You barely can see anything, but you just gotta make sure you get through Sector 1, and then you might be okay. Minico, our sprint race winner, is now racing it out with JTK for third place. JTK didn't finish the sprint race, now has been overtaken for third. Further back, Cryptic is under threat for 8th place. That was the last point spot in the sprint. Right now, Skither holds the last point spot in the feature, and he's going for a lunge once again. This lunge looks to be a bit more successful, but now he's got 2 teammates right there in the action, and Eric had to slip up tight and almost got cut across in front of by a fellow American. But right now, we're racing wheel to wheel here as we go into the Old Singapore Sling. Turn 10, contact. Eric stays ahead, but you could just see how tough it is in these conditions to get it woed down, and our biggest loser on the opening lap was Eric, down 4 places. Skither goes for another lunge at the hairpin this time without contact. George and him had contact, but this time Eric and him do not. Up in front of that, JTK is racing it out here with Night Owl. Side by side, JTK breaks later than Night Owl and gets the move done, but Night Owl does a little cutback and says, I'm gonna get ahead here. We're on board George watching this battle up in front. The two are leaning on one another, trying to break later, trying to be the last of the late breakers, and right now it's Night Owl getting the better end of JTK. Lap 1 goes to our championship leader, Jack Miles. And I don't think it's gonna get bowed down the amount of spray anytime soon, so we're gonna be stuck here for 17 laps probably of wet weather action in Singapore. I would say expect no overtakes with that, but we have seen quite a few actually. Meanwhile, remember, in these conditions there is no DRS online, so that will be a big thing for these drivers to make sure that they are close to the car in front in order to make the move without an assist from the rear wing. We ride on board George, who's trailing JTK and Night Owl. There's a battle brewing for 4th place. There's a battle brewing for 2nd place. Goggy is in an Invicta sandwich right now as things stand. I'm interested with these conditions, not only what wings the drivers are running, but I'm also interested to kind of see if they are adjusting the brake bias or really anything at all, because you're really limited with what you're doing. But are you adjusting your driving style? Are you adjusting your brake bias? What are you doing in these conditions to better help yourself drive faster and make these moves? Jack Miles seems to always do well in the wet weather at RPL. He is out to a 2-second lead over Blue Goggy. Remember, Blue Goggy is an RPL F2 team principal. And midfield Maestro, you could see the lockup on the front of the car. He just gets it slowed down in time not to make collateral damage with George F. Williams high tech right there. But everybody second on back seems to be forming in a train. No DRS in this train, but a train that is forming with Blue Goggy at the front of it. Little wiggle from JTK you saw. These conditions are just so tough for the drivers. Jack Miles leads lap 2 of this race, and he takes over the fastest lap once again. Jack Miles definitely needs to do all he can to extend the championship lead regardless of what happens to Skither, because we've seen Skither have quite the season so far in RPL F2 with 5 wins to his name. Right now we've got Minico trying to put pressure on Blue Goggy for 2nd place. I've got to wonder, from all the drivers who are in on the race, does the rain woe down at all at any point? I don't think it will, but the big thing is that, you know, we have seen some RPL F2 races, Imola and Miami, from what I can recall, where we had some races where it was raining during the event, but it was not enough for wet tires in Miami, I remember at the start. Blue Goggy was the one on the wrong strategy before. And right now, he's 3 seconds behind our race leader, Jack, trailing him by quite a hefty margin for 3 laps being complete. I mean, could we see the largest margin of victory happen here in RPL F2? I mean, that's a big question to ask, but, you know, I mean, it was back in Canada with Matt GW, a 27-second gap with Blue Goggy right now under threat from Minico and also losing time to Jack. We gotta ask if that's a possibility. Happened once in Imola where it was a possibility last season, but hey, we're here for records sometimes here on the RPL Formula 1 account. You can look at our YouTube. We have quite a few records we post about on there as well. Skither and Cryptic, some 2 former race winners here in RPL F2 racing it out for 8th place. You saw the fastest lap go to Jack Miles once again. Let's see what he's doing in comparison to the rest of the field. Night Owl is going quite fast. George is going quite fast. Minico is faster behind Goggy, but you could just see these guys are being caught up behind Goggy, and it is losing them quite a bit of time. JTK is holding on to 5th place over George Up Williams. These two battled before in RPL Tier 2 and are Tier 2 and Tier 3 champions. But right now, Minico is closing in on Blue Goggy, but not close enough to make the move, and he just taps the rear of the Trident at the braking zone. Further behind, JTK is just ahead of George, and Skither gets the place over Cryptic, but goes deep in the process. Cryptic will go around the outside now to try and recover that place, but look at this. They just have so much trouble getting the grip there on the circuit down at turn 8 to get it slowed down, and Cryptic goes ahead. Skither does the old switcheroo and will be side by side here as Cryptic puts him down low and pinches, and now Skither has the place. Look at this. You can race side by side here in the F2 cars in this section, whereas the F1 cars, you can't say that. This is great action. Thrilling stuff. Down to the hairpin. Cryptic has the inside line. Skither tries to get back at it, but cannot make the switch back. Cryptic parked the bus, and Skither got the switcheroo and got ahead. This is great stuff for 8th place. It may not be for the win. It may not be for the podium, but these are some former F2 winners, some former Tier 1 winners, some former Tier 2 winners racing it out. This is great action. Scintillating battling. Finally used that word after a while. Jack Miles leads yet another lap and takes the fastest lap with it. The gap at the front is 4.3 seconds. He set a 55.9 that lap. Goggy, his best is a 56.7. Minico, a 56.7. You see Night Owl just slightly slower. JTK and George are behind on their fastest laps. So Goggy and Minico, and also Night Owl, have pulled away from the JTK train that he is leading. But as you can see on our screens, they are not catching Jack Miles one bit. Let's look at the positions gained from our start. We didn't really have anybody have trouble. Skither gained 3, Night Owl gained 3, and of course Eric, as we mentioned earlier, the biggest loser from the start, down 5 places. George Up Williams is having a nice little ding-dong battle with JTK right here, and also is ahead of midfield Maestro, who we battled quite a bit in the sprint race just a bit ago. You've got to be careful not to clip any of the barriers. It was Neski who clipped the barrier right here on the right side where Night Owl is going through. Neski did that in the Tier 2 race yesterday. So I think some of these guys like Blue Goggy and George Up Williams, having the experience of racing yesterday in the Tier 2 race, although it's different cars, they have experience in the wet weather from the qualifying session. They also just have more track time at this circuit. It may not be the same cars as we mentioned, but that does help the drivers quite a bit here from time to time. The gap at the front of the field is 4.7 seconds. Our biggest margin of victory this season, I want to say, is 8 seconds in RPL F2. Last week, Leo Lund won by 8.7. Jack Miles sets the fastest lap right there at the front of our field. You can just see him just breezing by in a turn 1, by the way, at the front of our field. 8.7 was what Leo did. 9.1 is what Skither did in Imola. Looking to see if there are any higher gaps than that. We seem to have quite a hefty margin in the sprint races so far this season. Yeah, 9.1 seconds is the biggest gap from RPL F2 this season. Seems like all the battling has calmed down quite a bit, to say the least. Some of the drivers are talking about it potentially drying up a little bit on our circuit, and Goggy is wondering, is it worth staying out? Well, I will tell you right now, you know, you want to save your tires for one, and also, we know the risk of drivers getting punctures here in RPL F2. It was in Imola where JTK pitted the earliest and ended up missing out on a victory due to Skidder pitting later and having fresher tires at the end of the race. That's the big thing with these drivers that they have to watch out for if for some reason they do have to change tires in this event. And look at this. George Up Williams out of the hairpin. Out tractions JTK to claim 5th place on our leaderboard. Minico is right behind the blue Goggy Trident and breathing all over him. And Jack Miles sets yet another fastest lap. Minico has been flirting with the back of the Trident for multiple laps now and cannot find a way through. The times are improving on our leaderboard. You can see Minico and Night Owl faster as they go. Jack Miles setting fastest lap after fastest lap. Everybody is improving on the times. You can see as well the track has got less wet. That's the best way to put it. RPL Titan Iron, by the way, who's making his F2 return, said he liked these cars quite a bit better than the old cars. He is 23 seconds behind our race leader, Jack Miles, and runs in plumb last. Minico closing in on the Trident and is not close enough, but he'd have to go for a lunge. He'd have to go for a shot. He's gone for that shot. Goggy runs off-road, and Minico will not get the place, but he'll keep it around the outside of the Trident and try and out-traction him, and he does! Minico up to 2nd now. It's an Invicta, 1-2 on the board. Gotta be careful when following other cars in this train. That's what Blue Goggy has to be careful of. Look at this. He went a bit wide there trying to follow Minico. He's got his Academy teammate behind him, Night Owl, in this train. See how hard it is to get it woed down here. Look at the JTK and George train right here. I mean, look at trying to get out of the corner. I mean, George was in 1st gear right there, trying to outpower GTK down at the hairpin and out of the hairpin as well. 7.2 seconds is the gap for our race lead. Like I said, we've not had a gap over 10 seconds this season in RPL F2. Could this be the first time that happens this season? And will all the drivers make it to the end on their tires? That will be the big question. Jack Miles, of course, is staying out, and he will probably go faster. Yes, he does. By 41 thousandths. How much does Minico improve on the lap if he does? Minico did not improve on the lap. He's on to 55.9. George improved on his lap. Skidder goes for the fastest lap now, and he takes it. Look at that. It's a battle between 2 championship rivals for the fastest lap, Jack and Skidder. Right now, though, Jack has that 7-second lead, so of course, advantage will go to him. Further back, Skidder has caught up to the 3-car battle between Midfield Maestro, JTK, and George. These 4 are under a blanket for the 5th place spot, and not far behind Night Owl or Blue Goggy. That's safe to say. Jack Miles has ran away with it, though, and it's really no surprise when you look at his history in the wet weather conditions in RPL. The amount of wins he has in the wet is quite miraculous. 25 RPL F2 wins to Jack Miles' name, but also you want to look at all time and the wins across all tiers. Jack Miles has 52 to his name, looking for win 53 tonight. Does seem like Jack Miles does win on street circuits a lot. He won on F1. Baku, he won on F1 Las Vegas. He has had many podiums in races on street circuits that he really maybe should have not got or should have not been in contention for based on the car he was in. Season 9 Baku at the Alfa Romeo, now the Sauber, as you know it. There's other races we can look at, but Jack Miles takes yet another fastest lap. Eric took a 3-second time penalty for good measure, and Skither now is setting faster laps. Look at him as the tire wear is kicked in. He is going fast in his Dams Racing car. Look at this, trying to find a different line to go by the car in front of him. Skither is. This is how tough it is. JTK has now lost a bit of time to George, who's just looking like he's staying at the same level gap as he is on the car in front of Night Owl. Blue Goggy thought of making a move on Minico, but could not complete it. And Skither has just made the overtake for 7th now. Do both Invicta drivers belong to the streets if they win the sprint and feature here? Well, that's a good question. Seems like the street tracks are some of their strong suits, to say the least. SV said Gagi being a bottleneck. That's the same move George did to me yesterday, Goatley says in the Twitch chat. Is it just me, or does the audio cut out every now and then? I'm not sure. That could potentially be my mic. I had to use a different controller yesterday in the Tier 2 race because, well, this one, for whatever reason, was not working with the controller. We've got contact down at the braking zone. Night Owl has just gave Blue Goggy a few love taps down at the braking zone. And see what that does, though. It brings George back into the equation. He is 1.7 seconds back. Skither and JTK, they meet again. They were having a bit of fun times, to say sarcastically, in the F1 Singapore race here. And it was not great when it came to these two racing it out in the final laps in the second half of that race. Right now we're in the second half of this race and they're racing it out. Here's Blue Goggy conceding a place to Night Owl for 3rd. That is the last spot on the podium. JTK currently holds on for 6th place over the championship contender, Skither. One thing these two do have in common is, well, two things actually. Podium sitters in RPL F2 and Ferrari drivers who've got on the front row in RPL F1. But these two, not the best of friends on racetracks, isn't it safe to say with everybody? But these two, especially around this circuit specifically, currently do not hold the best of times. JTK holds on to the place, though, over Skither. And I want to take the time to mention while we're riding aboard Skither that it's great to see him racing this weekend, whether it be in RPL F2 or maybe F1 later tonight. He is one of the Florida Dryers, yeah. Might need some dryers on this racetrack for how wet it is. Florida drivers in RPL. We've got Ghost Flame, also known as Faded Nights. We've got Cookie, and we've got Skither. Florida natives in RPL. And obviously, we know the story, you know, Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton. Skither's one of those who've been affected by that, and JTK has been affected by the traction out of the hairpin, and it allows Skither to go through for 6th place, so he's on quite the recovery drive from the poor qualifying. It was nice to see him win last week in RPL F1, or excuse me, F2, and get onto the podium once again in RPL F1. Just a week removed from what happened with Hurricane Helene. Skither being a part of that state, I'm sure that's a big statement, a big story, and a big thing that he can talk about and say, hey, I went through a hurricane, and also I got a podium in the league and a race victory with that being said too. So great stuff there. Midfield Maestro is our first one to dip to the pit lane. And he's going to go for a new set of wet compound tires. Are we going to see some other drivers pit to make sure they do not have a puncture at the end of our race? What's that song, The Dip? By Freak Nasty, right? When I dip, you dip, we dip. Midfield Maestro dipped to the pit lane, and he he dipped onto new wet tires. Blue Goggy does have damage on the end plate of the Trident, so that may be why he let Night Owl go by so easily earlier on down into turn 1. I think Night Owl might have damage too. No, he does not. That's just my eyes being a bit blurry, I guess you could say. He's the only one in this train, though, of those guys with damage on the car. And I'll say right now, he's actually handling it quite well. The fact that he's right behind Night Owl and still remaining put there. George F. Williams, look at this. He lost so much traction there out of the hairpin, trying to go into the first gear and trying to get the power down. It did not work out for the Welsh driver, but he's currently ahead of Skither, who he collided with in the sprint race, and these two have a bit of history. Remember last season in Silverstone of RPL F2 as well? RPL Titan Iron has got a 3-second penalty to his name. And I will join back the party because I've lagged out a bit. It happens every time I commentate alone. Skither seems to be setting the pace once more. He's just taken over the fastest lap of this race. And Minico, crucially, the man in second place, has a track limit penalty to his name. So he has stepped out of bounds too many times. And that will be very costly for the Invicta, a Canadian who got his second career win in the sprint race. George is hanging on right now for 5th, but for how much longer is the high-tech gonna hang on over the dams? Here comes Skither, left or right? Which way are we going? We're going to the left side, diving down the inside. Does he get it slowed down in time to complete the pass? Yes, he does. Skither is up to 5th place. George has to concede the place and tuck back in for 6th. Now Skither can go hunt down Blue Goggy for 4th place, and maybe that could become 2nd place eventually with Minico's penalty, and maybe limit the damage in the championship between Jack Miles and Skither. Their gap will be quite different if we end the feature race right now and maybe apply some penalties from the sprint, but Skither does have to get up here on the grid and well, attack more to get some places and limit that damage, as we were saying. Jack Miles leads this race by 6.7 seconds. You can see he's lost a bit of time. Maybe the tire wear has kicked in on his Invicta, and maybe that will affect him quite a bit to finish out this Grand Prix. I'm sure he might be just tire saving now, of course, but I'm interested to see if how much it has died down. If it does stop raining, will it be worth making a trip to the pit lane? I mean, you know, do you want to go bold? Minico's going bold. He's entering the pit lane and boxing. Night Owl joins him. Is this too early? Is it the right time? Are they pitting for wets? Are they pitting for dries? What are we doing here in the pit lane with the two boxing from the top 5 spots? Minico is going for wet compound tires, believing he could not make it to the end of this race. If he finished this race in 3 wheels, he might have not had a chance for a podium. Night Owl has come in as well to go on to a new set of wet compound tires. Midfield Maestro was our other driver who pitted, and he also had put on a new set of wets. Jack Miles leads by 10 seconds now with Minico coming to the pits. Skither is behind Goggy. How much longer can Goggy keep Skither at bay? Not much longer, but Goggy goes a little defensive, and Midfield Maestro on new, fresh, wet tires has set the fastest lap. Skither is trying to go for the up and under on Blue Goggy, trying to make him fold under pressure, and Blue Goggy does not cave into that. But remember, if he wants to stay out and maybe think that he can pull it off, he's got to make sure he does this with his damage the way he wants it to, but also not lose enough time to Jack while fighting these other cars. It has died down, the rain, quite a bit, but is it enough to pit for dry tires? Is it also enough to just even pit in general and think you can recover the gap to the end of the race? Minico's gap to Jack is 34 seconds, so you could just see, while Minico is 6-7 seconds behind Jack, it's like 28 seconds here in an F2 car for a pit stop. Do you make that trip to the pits and cost yourself that time? That'll be a big question. Cryptic eases through on JTK for 5th place, and Jack Miles stays out. So Jack is basically saying, if you guys want to go to the pits, you can. I'm not going to. Do we see anybody else make a trip to the pits? Skither does. That was right in front of George. Skiller is in. Goggy stays out. I'm very interested to see if anybody's tires do blow out here at all in the race, and if anybody does make it to the end if the tires are seriously at a concerning rate. Do I think Jack is managing tires now? Maybe. However, JTK is out in the pit lane. What has happened to JTK? Midfield Maestro is making another trip to the pit lane. I'm not sure why, but we see Skiller go onto wet compound tires. And Midfield Maestro is the first one to pull off a gamble on going to the dry tires. Is that why Jack Miles has stayed out and waiting for that, maybe? Does he even give up the race lead at all, that being the question? I just heard JTK say in a voice chat, no point continuing on. Why is that the case, though? Miniko is going for a lunge, and there's contact with Eric down at the braking zone. Eric gets forced out wide and shoved out there by the Invicta. Miniko is in 5th place, but does have the penalty to spare. I'm sure Eric will not be happy about that. Was that fair on Miniko's part? That was very argy-bargy. Remember, Eric has not pitted. Miniko and Night Owl both have. Night Owl does not have the penalty. The interesting thing here is no one's going to double stack at all if you pit right now. And in fact, I think it's actually probably the time for dry tires. Midfield Maestro is right here in 10th place on the dry tires, and as he comes to the corner, I mean, he's not losing that much time. Look at this. And Jack Miles is in from the lead. Jack Miles has pitted from the lead. This is interesting. Blue Goggy stays out. Can he pull off a second F2 victory with just a few laps remaining? Is it enough time to do it? Jack Miles does exactly what Blue Goggy did in the RPL Tier 2 race and gave up the lead. This is very interesting that the same thing has happened again, but this time with different conditions. That was completely in the dry. Miniko, Night Owl, fastest laps being traded right there, and Jack Miles is onto the wet compound tires. George boxed as well. He is in for the wet compound tires as well. The only drivers who've stayed out so far on these tires are Titan, Eric, Goggy, and Cryptic. I'm interested to see what Goggy's gap is, though, with a 28-second buffer. We saw with Miniko. He'd be coming out probably in 7th place right now. I'm not too sure. I think Blue Goggy, from what I've heard, he's thinking he will not be able to make it to the end of this race. I want to see him try it anyway. I really do. Just because you cost yourself yesterday in the Tier 2 race by pitting from the lead. It's just a matter of if these tires can make it to the end from these drivers. Midfield Maestro has got a first penalty, but another one in the Singapore events. Gonna look at these tires. Is there gonna be a puncture on his car is what I'm wondering. And if there is, when does it happen? Cryptic is staying out as well in the Dirksen AIX. And further back, Skither, late on the brakes, pulls off the move for 6th place. And just remember, if Goggy does pit, he will come out in 7th place right now. He does pit from the race lead and gives it up once again with a few laps remaining. Does he really feel like he was going to get a puncture there? Where does he come out if he goes onto dry tires? Look at this. Cryptic is in as well. He might be pitting for dry tires compared to those guys who pitted for the wets. Our leader is in. Our 2nd place man is in. Jack Miles will inherit the lead. And George overtakes Titan. Miniko is at the fastest lap. Now that goes to Night Owl. Blue Goggy is in for dry compound tires. We're going to have to see quite a run to the field if he wants to have a chance for a podium in the last few laps. But I believe he does have damage still on that car. So he will have to do it with that. And Cryptic pitted, but he pitted for soft compound tires there. This is interesting because Goggy is going to have to warm up these tires, and so will Cryptic. How do they cope with going to the dry tires, and do they get up to the podium places? Miniko would be getting overtaken for 2nd right now and would be only 3rd. No Invicta 1-2, but look at this. The undercut has paid off for Miniko compared to Jack. 2.3 seconds. Let's see. Can Goggy do this? 3.3, he's back. He was just 4.1 seconds back. He's going to have a lot more grip in this Trident. Reese Dainty pulled off quite a miraculous win in RPL F1 by doing a strategy which we've probably never seen. If Gagi has enough grip here, he can get to the podium, I think, but the victory, probably not. A little too late, that would be. And it does not look like those tires have warmed up enough. And the track is probably not dry enough, with that being said, for these super soft tires to kick in at the time Blue Gagi would have wanted. Could argue maybe if he pitted a lap earlier, but he would have pitted with Jack there, and I don't know if he would have wanted to do that. You gotta try something different. Eric has looped it around. That's a place for Gagi. Eric from fifth place has got a puncture on the right rear tire. DRS has been enabled. RPL Titan Iron has been the one to go longest without a puncture on his car. Midfield Maestro picks up yet another penalty. Gagi is trailing Jack by now 14.8 seconds. He has gained a second, and he can change the outcome of this championship fight between Jack and Skither if there is a place traded here between those two in the final lap. You got a move made. Cryptic also got Eric, and has RPL Titan Iron kept it without a puncture? Now becomes my question. He is trying to go one more lap and go the whole distance on these tires. Gagi is down to a 14.2 gap on Jack. I don't think this is enough. Maybe if he didn't have this damage, you could argue, but he is going fast now, so he might get a place here with Skither. I'm interested to see if there's a mishap with Night Owl or Minico, if he can get that, but I doubt on these set of tires you gain 10 seconds in one lap, and we have a spin at the entrance of the pit lane. That is Eric, who is hit more trouble. That's so unfortunate for him. Titan has entered the final lap with 16 laps in these wet tires without a puncture. Very impressive stuff. I mean, he's struggling over Cryptic. We can see that, but, you know, the fact he's kept it without a puncture is pretty impressive. Midfield Maestro got another penalty, and I believe that was Cryptic, maybe, who set the fastest lap. No, Midfield Maestro did, excuse me. See this squealing of the tires right there. Gagi is closing in on Skither, but I don't know if it will be enough on this final lap to do it. It's smart for him to avoid a puncture, but, I mean, he might just get a place here over Skither, and that might be it. It definitely was interesting to see him try and go out the whole distance, but he did not do it. For the sake of his championship fight with Skither, the two-time champion and the reigning champion needed a victory in order to extend the gap over Skither, who was closing down the gap. And a 26th victory in RPL F2 is coming his way now. Under the lights of Singapore, Jack Miles claims the feature race in Singapore. Minico crosses second, just to be overtaken by Night Owl. And for fourth place, Skither does barely hang on over Blue Gagi, who does get credited with the fastest lap for an extra point in the end. Maybe he needed just a few more laps in the Trident to get another place or two or onto the podium. Look at how far back he was. Not too far off. Cryptic, does he steal the fastest lap over Blue Gagi? No, he does not. It will probably go to Blue Gagi unless Eric takes it. With Eric, how recently he pitted, I doubt he gets it. RPL Titan Iron went 17 laps in the wet compound tires and avoided a puncture. That is what full traction does for you, folks. RPL Titan Iron, in his RPL F2 return, picks up a few points. How about that, Titan? Very good stuff. Cryptic, also in his RPL F2 return, picked up a few points. Midfield Maestro crosses the line with a missing front wing and backing it across. Eric will cross 10th to be the last points runner. I'm not sure why JTK gave up like that and decided to retire from the event. That was very silly. I don't really understand why. He was running in a point spot. You didn't really feel like there was any need to continue. Nonetheless, Eric is our last one across the line, but Jack Miles picks up overall RPL win 53 and F2 win 26. It is his fourth in the season, Jack Miles. Wow, wow, wow. Titan said his right rear was a 90%. Wow. Minico said, it's a shame I threw P2 away, but still a double podium. Yes, Invicta get to celebrate with that double podium, and they can claim the Constructors' title next week in Imola, with that being said. We've got one more race this weekend to continue the action in RPL. It is going to be in Brazil for RPL F1, where the title for the Constructors can be wrapped up. Jack Miles and Skither had a 13-point difference in this race that allows Jack Miles to now have a 39-point lead. Jack Miles has conquered the wet weather once more, winning the race, and also conquered the streets as well. Both Invictas pick up victories in RPL F2. Here are your final results from the events. 4 penalties in the feature. 10 finishers there. Also 10 finishers in the sprint as well. I would give the driver of the day the sprint to Minico, and I'd give the driver of the day in the feature to either Jack or Skither there. A nice run through the field from Skither. From the back of the field, qualifying 11th there. Those are your final results. Let's give you a rundown of the final few RPL F2 races to finish out the season. A 39-point gap at the front of our field for the championship, with just 3 rounds remaining. We've got Imola, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. I feel like that's wrong. No, we've got, excuse me, Imola, Qatar, Abu Dhabi is tier 2. My bad, excuse me. Baku, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. I was partially right. I'm a little lucky there. I agree with Skither in the driver's chat about the whole cryptic battle. That was a very great battle. Probably one of the best battles I've seen in RPL F2 in a very long time. And probably one of the best battles in the wet I've seen in a very long time, in fact. The fact they were able to go side by side for that long was very impressive. So, Baku next week is when the title could be wrapped up for Invicta. The title for RPL F1 Constructors can be wrapped up tonight in Brazil, but nonetheless, our 3 remaining races are Azerbaijan, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi to finish out the RPL F2 season. So, one more event to finish off the weekend. I don't want to give it up, man. We'll be here for RPL F1 later tonight in Brazil in less than 2 hours' time. Make sure you join us here on RPL Formula 1 for the action. I'm your commentator, Ryan Searles, and we will see you then, or we'll see you next week for F2 in Azerbaijan around the streets of Baku. Ryan Searles signing off. Have a good one. I'll see you then. Good night.